Ladies and gentlemen, Economic Asian Guy here. Stop what you're doing right now because we are witnessing the most significant moment in commodity trading history. Today, January 2nd, 2026, marks the first trading day after China's silver export licensing system went live. And what we're seeing is nothing short of a complete breakdown of the global silver market. While you were celebrating New Year's, the financial world split into two separate universes. In Shanghai, physical silver is trading at $85.40 per ounce. In New York, paper silver closed at $72.15. That's a 13.25 spread. That's not a market anymore. That's two different planets operating under completely different laws of physics. We are witnessing the great divergence, the permanent separation of the real economy from the paper economy, the final divorce between atoms and algorithms. And while Shanghai is pricing silver based on scarcity and industrial panic, Western markets are pretending that nothing has changed. They're acting like China's export lockdown is just another policy adjustment. They're trading silver like it's still 2025, when Chinese refineries were flooding global markets with cheap metal. But those days are over, forever. China just took control of 60% of global silver supply and handed the keys to 44 state-approved companies. The free market is dead, the manipulation era is ending, and the new price discovery mechanism isn't happening in Chicago or London, it's happening in Shanghai, where reality meets demand, where atoms matter more than algorithms. Welcome to the post-Western silver market. Welcome to the Chinese century. And if you're still holding paper contracts thinking this divergence will close through arbitrage, you're about to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between markets and monopolies. And let's start with the mathematical impossibility of what we're witnessing today. In a normal, functioning global market, a 13-on price spread between major exchanges would last about 13 minutes. High-frequency trading algorithms would immediately detect the arbitrage opportunity, buy silver in New York at $72, sell it in Shanghai at $85, pocket $13 per ounce, risk-free. This mechanism, called arbitrage, is the invisible force that keeps global prices synchronized. It's market gravity. But today, market gravity is turned off. The arbitrage bridge is burning. And the algorithms that used to connect these markets are staring at their screens in confusion because the math doesn't work anymore. You can't buy silver in New York and ship it to Shanghai because China won't let you. The export licensing system that went live yesterday makes it illegal for unlicensed companies to export silver to China. And guess what? None of the Western silver dealers have licenses. They can't get licenses. The licenses are reserved for the 44 Chinese companies that Beijing handpicked to control global silver flow. So while Western traders see a 13-on arbitrage opportunity, they can't execute it. They can buy all the silver they want in New York, but they can't move it to where the demand is. The metal is trapped in the West, while the buyers are locked in the East. This creates a fundamental repricing event. Shanghai silver at $85 isn't expensive compared to Western silver at $72. Shanghai silver at $85 is cheap compared to Shanghai silver at $150, which is where it's heading when the remaining inventory runs out. The Chinese buyers bidding $85 aren't speculating. They're industrial users securing supply before the wells run completely dry. BYD needs silver for electric vehicle production. Jinko Solar needs it for photovoltaic cells. KTL needs it for battery manufacturing. These aren't hedge funds playing momentum. These are factories that shut down without silver. They don't care if it costs $85 or $100 or $150. They care about keeping their assembly lines moving. Meanwhile, Western paper traders are still thinking like it's 2025. They're looking at their charts and saying, silver is overbought at $72. Time to sell. They're completely disconnected from the physical reality that the metal they're trading on paper doesn't actually exist in deliverable form anymore. Now let's talk about why Western markets are living in a fantasy world. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. Yesterday, China implemented the most restrictive export controls on a critical industrial metal in modern history. Today, Western financial media is treating it like a minor policy adjustment. CNBC ran a segment this morning titled Silver Volatility, Temporary Supply Disruption. Bloomberg published an analysis suggesting the Shanghai premium is unsustainable and will normalize within weeks. They're missing the point entirely. This isn't a temporary disruption. This is permanent restructuring. China didn't implement export licensing as a negotiating tactic. They implemented it as a strategic weapon. They're not planning to reverse it when prices get too high. They're planning to squeeze Western industry until Western governments come begging for access to Chinese silver at Chinese prices on Chinese terms. The Western financial establishment can't process this reality because it challenges everything they believe about free markets and global trade. For 50 years, they've operated under the assumption that commodities flow freely across borders, that supply chains are elastic, that if one source gets cut off, alternatives emerge quickly. But silver isn't oil. You can't drill for more silver overnight. Silver isn't wheat. You can't plant silver in different countries and harvest it next season. Silver is geology. Silver is chemistry. Silver is atomic element 47. And most of the easily accessible silver on planet Earth has already been mined and refined through Chinese facilities. The Western financial system was built on cheap Chinese inputs, cheap labor, cheap materials, cheap processing. They optimized for efficiency and forgot about resilience. They thought globalization meant access. They thought interdependence meant mutual benefit. They never considered that China might weaponize its position as the world's factory floor. Now they're learning the hard way. Shanghai's $85 price isn't just reflecting local demand, it's reflecting the new reality that China controls the global price discovery mechanism. When 60% of supply is controlled by one country, that country doesn't take prices, it makes prices. And China's price today is $85. Tomorrow it might be $100. Next week it might be $150. The West has no choice but to pay or go without. That's not a free market. That's a monopoly. And monopolies don't negotiate, they dictate. This brings us to the 44 companies that now control global silver fate. When China announced its export licensing system, most analysts expected hundreds of companies to qualify. After all, China has thousands of silver refineries and trading companies. But Beijing had different plans. They approved exactly 44 companies for 2026-2027 licenses. That's not market access, that's market control. These 44 companies aren't competing with each other for Western customers. They're coordinating with each other to maximize revenue from Western desperation. It's a cartel. Government-sanctioned, state-managed, strategically operated. Let's look at who made the list. The largest licensees are state-owned enterprises like China Minmetals and China National Gold Group. These aren't private companies responding to market signals. These are arms of the Chinese government executing state policy. Their job isn't to maximize shareholder value. Their job is to serve Chinese strategic interests. When Tesla calls China Minmetals begging for silver, China Minmetals doesn't just quote a price. They consult with Beijing. They consider the geopolitical implications. They ask, what does China want from America in exchange for this silver? Maybe China wants technology transfer. Maybe they want military cooperation. Maybe they want Taiwan concessions. Silver becomes a bargaining chip in a much larger game. The remaining licensees are private companies, but they're private companies operating under Chinese government oversight. They know that their licenses can be revoked if they don't serve Chinese interests. They know that their executives can be arrested if they get too friendly with Western buyers. They're not free market participants, they're state-supervised monopolists. And this creates a pricing dynamic that Western markets don't understand. These 44 companies don't need to compete on price because they don't have competition. If Tesla doesn't like China Minmetals' price, where else can Tesla go? The other 43 licensed companies? They're all getting their pricing guidance from the same source, Beijing. The unlicensed companies, they can't export. It's illegal. Western silver producers, they can't meet Tesla's volume requirements. There is no alternative. There is no competition. There is only the Chinese silver cartel setting prices based on strategic value, not supply and demand. This is why Shanghai silver hit $85 today and will likely hit $100 next week. It's not about scarcity. It's about control. The 44 licensed companies can produce enough silver to meet global demand if they want to, but they don't want to. They want to maximize Chinese leverage over Western industry. They want to extract the maximum strategic value from every ounce. And that value is measured in technology transfer, political concessions, and industrial dependence, not just dollars. This brings us to the endgame scenario because what we're witnessing today is just the beginning. The great divergence between Shanghai physical and Western paper isn't going to close through arbitrage. It's going to widen through industrial panic. As Western companies realize that their Chinese suppliers have disappeared overnight, the scramble for remaining Western silver will intensify. Apple needs 15 million ounces annually for iPhone production. Their Chinese suppliers just lost their export licenses. Where do they get silver now? Samsung needs 8 million ounces for semiconductor manufacturing. Their supply contracts just became worthless. How do they keep their fabs running? Tesla needs 2.3 million ounces for Austin Gigafactory production. Elon Musk's "this is not good" tweet was him realizing that his supply chain just evaporated. These companies will start bidding against each other for the remaining Western silver supply. But there isn't enough Western silver to meet demand. The US produces about 40 million ounces annually. Europe produces 15 million ounces, that's 55 million ounces total, to replace 400 million ounces of Chinese supply. The math doesn't work. The shortage is structural. The price response will be exponential. And this is where Shanghai's pricing power becomes absolute. The 44 licensed Chinese companies aren't just controlling Chinese silver. They're controlling global silver because they're only entities with enough supply to meet industrial demand. When Apple's procurement team calls China Minmetals offering $90 per ounce for 15 million ounces, China Minmetals will say, that's not enough. We need $120 per ounce, plus technology licensing agreements, plus manufacturing partnerships, plus political commitments. Apple will pay. They have no choice. The alternative is shutting down iPhone production. And when Apple pays $120 per ounce to Chinese suppliers, the global silver price becomes $120 per ounce. Not because of supply and demand, because of monopoly pricing power. The Western paper markets will eventually capitulate. The COMEX futures will eventually catch up to Shanghai Physical. The arbitrage gap will close not through metal movement, but through Western price capitulation. $72 silver will become $85 silver, will become $100 silver, will become $150 silver. Not because silver is getting scarcer, because China is getting greedier. And the West is getting more desperate. This is the new world order in commodity markets. China controls the atoms. America controls the algorithms. But atoms always beat algorithms in the end. The Great Divergence isn't ending, it's accelerating. Shanghai just told the world what silver is really worth when you control the supply. The West is about to learn what silver costs when you don't. Today's 13-eye spread is just the opening bid in an auction where the Chinese are the only sellers and the Westerners are desperate buyers. The hammer falls tomorrow when industrial procurement teams realize their supply chains are gone forever. Welcome to the Chinese century of commodity control. I'm Economic Asian Guy. Remember to hold physical, ignore paper, and prepare for the New World Order. The divergence is permanent. The control is absolute. The price is whatever China says it is.